All right, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome. So this is lesson 6.5, and we are talking about applying a system of linear equations. So this is going to be kind of a recap of lesson 6.1 through 6.4, okay? It's kind of how do you apply this in real life or with word problems. A big functionality of this is the homework, which is on ALEKS, which will actually be all about application. So as with this chapter, ladies and gentlemen, we do have bell work. So please answer 2 of these, and then we'll get going in a second. All right, so if you look at these guys, here's the big key factor for you to take away would be, what's the simplest way to solve this? Well, all of these, the simplest way is graphing, but if I don't give you decimals, what's the alternative? And on this one here, you would multiply this top, the quickest way, by 2. All right, and the reason is then you could cancel out the b's pretty simply. So you would have 4a, and then that would be plus 2b equals, and that is 38. Okay, add that up, that'd be 7a equals 35. 7 divided by 35 is 5, so you know a equals 5. And then you guys can figure out b, right? Plug in 10, plug in 5 to make 10, subtract it, b equals 9. All right, this one, set up the equation. Do a key. Muffins would be x. Granola bars would be y. So it would be 6x plus 12y, and that's going to equal 26.70. And then 8x plus 15y equals 34. Now, am I going to solve this using substitution or elimination? No way. Graph it. Okay, when you graph this, you'll get your answer. Remember, where your answer is where the lines intersect at that point. The x-coordinate would be the cost for the muffins, and the y-coordinate would be the cost for the granola bars. So please make sure you know what you're looking at as well. And then lastly, the easiest way to solve this, there's 2, would be either to multiply this top equation by -3, so they cancel out the x's because negative and negative is positive, so that'd be 6x. Or you can multiply by a -4. Okay, if you multiply by a -4, you get -4y over 4y, and that cancel out. I'm going to go the 3 route. Okay, so that way when I do it, oh, let me not do that. The negative and negative is going to be plus 6x, and then it's minus 3y, and it's going to equal -15. Set that up. These cancel out. This is going to be 4 minus 3, which is 1, which is y, equals 3. How about that? Simple. Plug 3 back in, get your x value, you move on. All right, so there's how you do that elimination. So hopefully you did that in your bell work. Simple setup. Here are the 5 ways that you can do it. Okay, graphing. Substitution. Remember, substitution was to get it to x equals or y equals, and then you would plug it back into the other equation. So remember, substitution was out of the 2 equations, getting one of them to x or y, and then when it gets y equals, you plug it into the other equation. And then elimination by addition, by subtraction. We really didn't do too much on subtraction, but when we did subtraction, remember, if we did a negative in the variable at the bottom, you distributed the negative and then you would add, but technically it is subtraction, but you are adding. Okay, elimination using multiplication. That's if, ladies and gentlemen, remember they don't add up and you got to multiply like we did at the beginning. So here's a big key factor. Determine the best method to solve this equation. All right, and then you go from there. So on the test on Friday, we will have an example like this where it'll give you an equation and then you have to tell me how to solve it by multiplying a number into it. Okay, so for example, on this one here, the best way, multiply this by -2. If you do that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to write it below. It'd be -4x minus 6y equals 2 times 3. That'd be -46. You go from there. -4y equals, that is -12. Divide, y equals 3. Okay, then you can plug the 3 back in. I know that's 9. So 9 minus 23 would be 2x equals 14. And so x equals 7. All right, so there are my values. Okay, I did the math by plugging in here. This is 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, subtract it from both sides. You get the drift. Simple enough, right? Okay, so that's the basic premise. Now what I want you to do is use elimination and substitution or substitution to solve these. We used in class today, we used elimination on all of these. So before I begin, I want you guys to think about this real quick, okay? Look at these equations, and you tell me, where would we start? What value can we multiply into this equation to get one of these variables to eliminate? So for example, we could eliminate the x values, but are those easy to do? No, they're not. Okay, but what's the easiest is the 7s. We have 7 and 7, but they're positive. So you need to make one of these negative. So I'm going to do the, sorry, my board freaks out sometimes. I'm going to do the bottom number real quick, multiply by -1. If I do that, I would get 2x minus 7y equals -9. Can I now add these two together? Yes, you can. So that is going to be 7x. That cancels out because 7 minus 7 equals -7. X equals -1. Then you plug it back in and solve for y. I'm not going to solve for y because you guys can do that step. Same with this one. What would you multiply? Simplest thing to eliminate. You can multiply to get 15 here and here, but there's an 8 and a 4. Common variable would be 8. Multiply this by 2. So that way you would get, I did that earlier today too. Get rid of this line. So that way you would get down here, 2 times 3 is 6x minus 8y equals -20. Multiply that out. 11x, these cancel, equals -22. X equals -2. Simple enough. Plug it back in, solve for y. I'm not going to do it like I said. Use Desmos if you have to. Last one. Multiply this equation by what? 2. Okay, this one happens to be the same thing. So it's 10x minus 2y equals 34. All right, you'd end up with 13x equals 39. Can you simplify that? Yes, x equals 3. Plug it back in, get your y value. Hopefully you see the process, okay? So on the test on Friday, you'll have 2 equations. You'll say, how do you solve? What's the first step? The first step in this one is what? Multiply by 2. Is there any other first step that would actually solve this? No, there isn't. Now, you can multiply by 3 and 5, but that's a dual step where you'd have to multiply by both. The only one that has just one single step is multiplying it by 2. All right, real world. I want to make sure I showed you guys this as well. On the notes, if you go to Canvas and print these out, these won't be in color, okay? But this graph is in color. So the blue line is the top line, the red's the bottom. We need to create equations. And these equations need to be a form of y equals mx plus b equations. So I'm going to set them up as y equals, okay? So that way we can physically graph. Remember, we talked about being able to read an equation and write it. So let's start with the blue. Y equals mx plus b, okay? Y equals mx plus b. All right, if I set that up, ladies and gentlemen, my b represents what? The y-intercept. My y-intercept for the blue line is 45. So I'm going to know it's x plus 45. And then the intercept for my red, x plus 35. Okay? I know it's x plus because it's the positive. Remember, the x doesn't change. Now we got to find our slope. This slope here on the blue, it goes up, over, and 1. But please make sure you look at the key. And what I mean by that is look at the value in which it changes. Up, so you go up, rise over run. We go from 45 to 50, it's going to be 5. And then it's over from here to here would be what? Each incremental square is actually worth how many miles? 20. So it's 5 over 20 or 1 over 4. Okay? So this would be 1 over 4. Please make sure you do that. Okay? Keep an eye on that in the graph. We might try to trick you on something like that. It's not 1 for 1 all the time. All right, and then the x coordinate here. The only problem with your guys' graph on the notes is that there's a coordinate here, but if you look, it actually doesn't go over the center perfectly. Now, it looks like it on your paper, but it's not. So the only other value is up here. So my value here is 0, 35, right? Because it doesn't go anywhere, but it goes up 35. My value here is over, so it'll be 220 and 100. Okay, so let me switch to the skinny one finally. So my value, if I give you 2 points, remember use the y2 minus y1 slope formula. Okay, let's do it. It would be 35 over 0 minus minus. My x value is going to be 220 over 100. It's a 65 over 220. If I get a calculator, which let me grab that real quick. I want to leave it in decimal form. So it'll be 65 divided by 220. And it's going to come out to be 13 over 44. All right, that's my equation. Now, what does it mean? Well, what it means is that the blue one is more expensive than the red. The red is a pretty sweet deal until you drive this car, what? 220 miles, okay? Please make sure you can read the difference between the two graphs. If I were to go beyond 220 miles, which one of these car rental places is more expensive? Because of the slope, it would actually be the red one, okay? So please make sure you got that. And then solving it, if you solved it, you would know that at 220 miles, they are the same price, okay? They are same price of $100. Sorry, I want to look crooked at the end. Okay? That's what your points represent. At 220, it's going to be $100 for the same price. All right, on these ones, these last couple ones, there's two more. I got to make sure you guys can take the written word and write it into equations. So with Jared here, Jared works 70 hours this summer. Okay? He plans to work 2.5 hours in each of the coming days. Clementine has started working, plans to work 5 hours a day. Write and solve a system of equations to find out how long it will be before they work the same number of hours. Okay, so we're finding something. Do we know what we're finding? No. Okay, so that's going to be our y. It's going to be equal. All right. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we have to look at it and say to ourselves, okay, this is Jared at the top. Jared's already worked 70 hours. And he's going to work what? 2.5 hours a day. And then what is Clementine going to do? 5 hours a day. Graph it. Get your answer. But know when you get your values that the x value is going to equal your days and y equals hours. Please make sure on the test that you know exactly what you're looking for when you read the graph. There's nothing worse than for you guys to get the right answer, but to miss the variables. So please make sure you understand the key. Okay? And then last but certainly not least, on the music with Kendrick. Okay? Kendrick pays $14.90. In this case, you can write it as you see it. To download. So he's paying $14.90. Usually that means, ladies and gentlemen, that's the finality of something. Finality, and then to download songs and an album. Jeffrey does the same thing, songs and an album. Do we know how much these songs cost? No, we don't. Do we know how much this album costs? No, we don't. Jeffrey's the same way. 3x plus 2y. How much does the music club charge to download a song? And then how much of their entire album? Well, remember, X is song, Y is album. Where they cross, that's your point. That would be your answer. Within the context of this lesson, ladies and gentlemen, in the homework, it's required that you please turn the written word into an equation. Then you can graph it to get the answer. Be smart about it. Look, and if you struggle, please come see me before we take this test. It's been my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget the ALEKS and everything else that we're doing. Good job so far this year, guys. We've been busting through this, and everybody's been doing fantastic. If you have any questions, come see me. I'll talk to you soon.